Beauty berries. What the heck are those? That is what I used to say for the longest time because I am not a Florida native. But after living here and having this beautiful plant and berry in my yard and now cultivating it to have several bushes over the years, I can safely say beautyberry is probably one of my favorite late summer, early fall blooms. The color of the berries themselves can kind of start out almost like an ombre pattern, and then they start to ripen and turn purple on the branch, and that is the ideal time to pick them for jams, jellies, all kinds of syrups. And so that is what we're going to be talking about today, is a beautyberry jam or jelly, if you will, and then how we created the recipe, and also how I would tweak what we did a little bit, because I'll share that at the end. I felt that we were missing a critical jam ingredient to this recipe. But before I go into that, I'm going to quickly share with you our process for creating jams and jellies in general, just like basic canning knowledge. Then I'll go into the recipe stats and ratios for water to pectin to sugar to berry ratios. And then we'll kind of go through the process. You'll follow along as me and my middle daughter start our journey. This is the first time we have made this particular type of jam with beauty berries. And so we learned, like I said, we learned a lot along the way. There are a few tips and tricks I'll share at the end that I would definitely recommend if you decide to do this summer or fall with any beauty berries you have. But if you are new to the canning process, the first step is to sterilize your canning materials. That means the lids and the glass jars that come with them. One thing to note, I did actually reuse some jars from like old pasta jars that I had for just some of the jelly that we were going to use ourselves. But I would not recommend doing that for like canning. Apparently those types of jars and lids are not super secure. So you would not want to use that for like long-term storage. If you're using it in the fridge, over the next week or two, even probably it's fine. But I would definitely do your research on that and truly use like canning mason type jars that have a thicker glass and that really nice sturdy lid that attaches. So there are two ways that you can sterilize your canning materials. You can boil them in water for 10 minutes, or you can, with the glass component only, I would do this with, and then you would boil the lid part. But with the glass jars, you can also just put them in the oven for about 10 minutes on 300 degrees, and that will also sterilize them. So the biggest thing is when you're sterilizing, you want to make sure everything is just super duper clean. So I feel like that's important to mention, especially if you're new to canning jams or jellies or syrups or the like. Then from there, after we collected all the berries, we kind of got straight to work. We added in our ratio, and I'll get you that recipe ratio here in a moment, but we added in our water and our berries to the boiling water. So we had first sterilized everything, dumped that water out, boiled some more water in the ratio that we needed, and then started to put the berries in the water, and just kind of, you see here, kind of stirring them around, making sure that they're just really getting nice and warm. As they get warm, the casing kind of around the berry tends to kind of get white and pop up, and that's when you can kind of see how the color changes. That's when you know that the berries are really starting to get warmed up and really mix with that super hot water. From there, then once it starts to get to that point, in this case I was following a recipe in which we actually strained out the liquid from the pot of like boiling water and berries, and then you add about half of that additional kind of fruit component into the jelly if you want to do that, if you want to add that back in. You do not have to. It can be more of a proper jelly where there is not really the fruit bits, but that is an option. I like the fruit in my jams and jellies. And on that note, the difference between jam and jelly is actually that very part. So jelly is typically just the strained out liquidy part that is then gelled with the pectin. And then a jam would be more of like the crushed up fruits in it. So I guess technically I really like the crushed up fruits, which would make it jam. If you're more of a jelly lover, then I would recommend taking all of the fruit out and straining, which is what I did there. I basically had a cheesecloth over a strainer, and then we mixed it out and then put it back in. Okay, once that's all done, you then pour as much fruit as you want to go back in there into the boiling water mixture, put it back in the pan. You add in your pectin, you add in your sugar, and then you start to really let that just come together, dissolve those bits. Now here's where I feel like I made a critical not mistake, it ended up being still really good, but I would also include, if I were doing this again, and we will actually, we have another batch we're going to do, I would add in a few tablespoons of lemon to this. That was a critical component that I've heard will actually help set the pectin in the mixture. So that is something I would recommend. Again, at the end of the video, I will have for you all the ratios of like the sugar to water to pectin that I use. But basically, after we have all that and the mixture is ready, it's nice and warm, the pectin and the sugar has all solidified, it's all come together, you pour your jam or jelly using, I love using these really great canning kind of they help you pour the mixture into a can. I'm not sure the proper word for it. Clearly I'm not a big time canner, but I'm trying to get more into it. And so you put that base, you can purchase these anywhere for canning, over your jar, and then you pour it in. The critical thing with canning though that I've learned, you do want to leave maybe like a 1/2 inch at the top of your container for everything to set, and then for it to store well. Now, this is an example of a container that I use that this is just going to be for us. We're going to use it very quickly. It does not need to be like super sterilized. Although I did sterilize everything, but I'm talking about like the lid. I washed really carefully, but it's not going to be something that I would have like in the pantry just for like a year, out. We're going to keep that in the fridge and use that for all kinds of PB&J. So then we close the lid. And then within about an hour, we started hearing those lids pop. And that's how you know everything is really secured. You want to hear your mason jar lid pop, which means it is not only securely closed, but that you have done everything right in your efforts to sterilize and all that good stuff. So this is the ratio that I would use for the ingredients to get what I would consider to be the best jelly or jam consistency. Again, making sure you add in that lemon. I had seen a recipe that did not include that. And honestly, ours turned out a little bit more liquidy, I would say, slightly. It's still a really cool consistency, and I actually don't hate it because we've been using it almost like a little bit of a simple syrup here and there as well. So honestly, you kind of can't go wrong, in my opinion. It was a really fun experiment though. Like I said, we're going to make another batch, and I would love to hear in the comments if anybody does this more regularly or has thoughts on this or other types of jams or jellies. But Beautyberry Jam is so good. It has almost a flavor of a typical berry, but almost a flowery aftertaste. So I'm a huge fan and can't wait to do much more of this in the future. I'd love to hear, like I said, any comments or thoughts you have in the comment section below, and I'm excited to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.